Peace. What's good? How y'all doing? Today is Friday, May 17th. Just looking at my phone to confirm that. I pray that this message reaches you all in the best of health, spirit, and mind. I'm doing really well. Thank you very much. Feeling good. I've been in the lab working on a lot of stuff, a lot of content, and I'm very excited for what's to come. I'm going to be putting up more content and engaging my audience and all of you guys a lot more. So be on the lookout for that. Real quick, my Science of Self curriculum is up. So I'm going to put the link in the video description below. Classes or courses are $25 a piece. And the topics or the subjects, the science of fear, self-doubt, and inner turmoil. These are the courses that are up so far. Thoughts Become Things, The Power of the Subconscious Mind, Your Inner Clock, Recognizing How and When to Move, The Law of Attraction and the Power of Faith, and The Science of Breath, Prana, Energy Cultivation, and Understanding Prana and Energy Cultivation. I believe that's it. So that's up. I'm super excited about it. It's videos, it's worksheets, it's a whole full intellectual offering on those subjects. And I have a lot more courses that I'm going to be uploading. I'm just getting them together so that I can put them up so that they can be the right type of quality that fits with my own personal standards. I am also doing my first webinar next weekend. It's going to be titled Getting Unstuck. Taking steps towards consciously creating your reality. That's going to be next weekend. I'm getting ready to announce that as well on my social media platforms. And then my workbook, The Science of Self, Part 1, Mind, right, is available for purchase now. The physical workbook is up as well as the ebook, and then my ebook, Practical Steps to Health and Wellbeing, is available online right now. So I will put a link below where you can access all of that stuff. I greatly appreciate all of you guys for the reciprocal nature of our relationship, where I'm not just coming here and talking to you and feeding you, but the relationship is reciprocal and we have a mutual giving and receiving. If you ordered the Science of Self workbook, those workbooks were shipped out yesterday and are being shipped out today, so you should get them in the coming days, okay? And if you have any questions about any orders or any of my products, email me at info@zazaali.com. So this is a conversation that is always lurking in the shadows, right? And I steer away from talking about this, not because I have a problem with talking about it, but because this particular conversation brings a lot of negative energy towards me. I'm going to work on, guys, not smacking. I hate when I edit my videos and I see myself smacking, but I do not want to. I want to try to put up a couple of videos today, so I don't want to be in editing today. I just want to do this video and put it up. So I'm going to try to be mindful when I'm saying this out loud so that I can be cognizant of my own self, that I do that, and it drives me crazy, and I'm going to consciously work on not doing that. So maybe I'll talk a little bit slower, because that's when I tend to do that. Say and smack, but I don't want to edit this video. I just want to come straight off the dome, say what's in my head and on my heart, and then upload it and let it do whatever it's going to do. So last week I had 3 consultations with 3 mixed race people, 2 men and 1 woman, excuse me. And it was so interesting to me that all 3 of them, throughout, the process of the consultation, and by the way, if you want to work with me directly, I help people get clarity in their lives. You can also click the link in the bio below and get more information on that, or you can email me at info@zazaali.com. These 3 consultations, all of them had an underlying, they had all a plethora of different things that they wanted to talk about. This wasn't why they reached out to me, but it was one of the things that, was an underlying wound, right? Or a scab right? Something that they've continuously been having to deal with their whole lives. This constant battle or fight or figuring out of who they are and where they actually stand as a biracial person, as a black person, or whatever the categories are in between, right? And so the last conversation when it came up, and mind you, they didn't contact me about being mixed, but I think people feel more comfortable talking to me about being mixed because, they know that I am. I've talked about it briefly, never really, just addressed it like in a full context, like I'm doing now. But I have mentioned it in interviews or in passing before about being mixed in my relationship or lack thereof with my mother, right? So I said, okay, I just did it. I just smacked. I said, okay, I need to talk about this. You know what I mean? Because it's a part of my story. And really, I'm really kind of over and tired of, not in a, stressed out way or anything. So you guys don't have to write me and tell me to ignore it because I've been ignoring it my whole life. But, just constantly this is something that comes up about me, and comments that I see people comment on my videos and say very disparaging and disrespectful things, whether they agree with me on certain points that I'm making, or whether they have an issue about, my perspective on something, or just the issue of how I look, which tends to come up a lot in comments, which always baffles me. Or people thinking that trying to only credit me for who and what I am just because of the fact that I am mixed. So my biological mother is white. I never lived with her. My father got full legal custody of me when I was 2 weeks old as a baby. And basically, my father's side of my family raised me. My godmother when I was a baby, and then my auntie, Norma Jean, and then my sister, Deborah. I lived with my father and his girlfriend for a time. Who else? I lived with my grandmother when I was younger as a D. But yeah, my father's side of the family raised me, and I really didn't have any connection to my mother's side of her family at all, which is unfortunate now that I look back at it as a, grown, full-fledged woman with a child, and I recognize how important having, the full structure of the family, right? So not just, my father's side of the family, but also my mother's family as well. I'm taking notes so I can remember things as I talk to you guys. And not to say that I, felt like, being a part of a white world would have somehow benefited me in a different type of way, but just purely from a fundamental family perspective, the aunties, the uncles, the nephews, the nieces, the grandmothers, the grandfathers, that whole one side of my family infrastructure, I never got to experience that. And this is why I feel like I am a very accurate candidate to be able to discuss this topic, because I understand the pros and cons of interracial relationships, right? And I'm not judging people for who they get in relationships. Who you love is who you love. Who you get involved with is who you get involved with. I'm not anti-interracial relationships at all. I'm just pro-Black family. And I am that because that's the only world I know. That's the only reality I've ever known. And because I also understand the social dynamics and the racial dynamics in America, I recognize that as a Black man or as a Black woman, the moment that you interact with or engage or marry, particularly the white race, right? And I know being mixed race is multi-layered because sometimes there's the Black and Asian, there's the Black and Mexican or Latino, Black and Native American, right? So it's multi-layered. Black people don't really departmentalize those different mixed entities, right? If you're mixed, you're mixed, right? Now, when it comes to having a white parent in particular, like me having a white mother or having a white father for someone else, there's this, wait, let me stop and go back to my point about the full family. So my father and my father and my mother didn't have a long-standing relationship, right? Um, they got together. They were seeing each other for less than a year. My father, she got pregnant with me. And I think during the process, I never, was mature enough when my father was alive to actually really ask him about this in the way that would give me clarity. So I'm kind of, reaching or guesstimating based on the conversations I did have with my father and what I know about my mother and my upbringing. My father didn't really think through, what it's going to mean to have a child by a woman who later I would learn that there was, racism in my mother's family's background, and her family never actually accepted me. So these people, my family on my mother's side, never fully accepted my father having, I mean, their child, their granddaughter, or whatever, having a child by a black man, and they considered me to be a black child. Now, I did have situations in my upbringing where I met with my mother's family and, had a connection with certain people in her family. I don't now, but I did. So I don't want it to make it seem like I'm some scorned mixed race woman that, my white family, rejected me. So now, I'm speaking up for black people. No, you're listening to a woman who has, processed and is very introspective and thinks about these things internally as a mother, right? And have come to a very strong point emotionally and mentally about this topic, which is why I'm actually talking to you about this right now. There's a lot of mixed race people in America in particular that tend to be very off kilt when it comes to having a emotional stability. And I know because people reach out to me, especially now that, as a public figure, a lot of people are very open with me about their experiences. Black men that have had children with white women, and then the relationship doesn't, work out. So now he's trying to figure out how to, navigate having a mixed race child in a black family where there's colorism and there's, all of these different things at play. And what schools to take them to, how the white people treat them, how black people treat them, and black women who have children by white men, and then all of a sudden she starts to recognize and realize racism within him and within his family, and now she's like, oh my God, how do I make this work? This guy has issues with black people. I've seen it all, heard it all, read it all, experienced a lot. So I'm giving you guys my assessment as a mixed race woman, but also as an emotionally mature woman who has dealt with the ebbs and flows of this topic. I get a lot of negative energy and negative conversation about this subject on social media. If I, cared to, I would share with you guys some of the comments that people make continually about me on social media, but I don't. And part of the reason why I'm doing this video is because I am getting ready to start putting up more content and be a lot more open about, my life and just about my work and pouring myself into what I do. And so this is kind of drawing a line in the sand for me at this point. I'm not trying to be embraced or be accepted by anybody. I'm in a great place right now. I have absolutely no problem with people having an issue with me being a mixed race woman. None. So the people who I've had, confrontations with in the conscious community, or people who have tried to call me out in the conscious community for trying to, lead and teach black women or to talk about black subjects or any of that, do as you wish. You know what I'm saying? There's no power struggle going on here. I'm totally, centered and confident with who and what I am. So I don't need your validation. I don't need your approval. And I am perfectly fine with you not accepting or embracing me. Okay? So keep that in mind as you, whatever comments come with this, or you share this, or you talk about this or whatnot. And this is something that part of the reason that I'm doing this video, because the schism of racism in America, and I know this is a global thing, but it's a different level in America in particular, has created a real neurotic and so sociopathic kind of energy in not just mixed race people, but black people, white people, all of us. We suffer from a lot of these different mental illnesses and illnesses that we actually think are acceptable. I.e., I've seen a lot of instances, and I talk about this in part two of volume two of Black Matters, where women are jealous of girls. And that was an experience, little girls. That was my experience coming up as a little mixed race girl. Now, mind you, most of the people who I grew up around in Oakland and Brookfield, right? It's where Oakland, that was my childhood, my elementary years. Most of the people I grew up around didn't know I was mixed. Not because I was hiding it, but because my mom wasn't in my life. My dad had custody of me. So for everybody, I was pretty much light skinned, young girl, wavy, curly, long hair, whatever, that whole thing, right? I had several situations as a child that I can look back and remember, including my father's girlfriend, of grown women being jealous of me and mentally and emotionally abusing me. Now, I know that goes beyond just colorism. It does involve colorism, though. But I think that it's important for us as women in this era of, the Me Too movement and feminism and whatnot, and talking about our culture as girls and women and our accountability. This is something that really needs to be talked about, because I've experienced it, and I know other women and girls that have experienced it, and even men who are involved in relationships with women who are jealous of their daughters and who actually take the side of the women who are jealous of the daughters and end up, emotionally and energetically abandoning their daughters. I had this experience where I had actual women, black women that were in my life as a child. I'm not talking about a woman where it's competitive. I'm talking about as a child. And yes, I was very smart. I was, my father had me in an all black private school where I was, immersed in a lot of culture and a lot of energy and a lot of love. I was a very, I was an intelligent young child, right? So you add all of those different things up, and I'm dealing with this energy as a child, really trying to figure it out. You know what I'm saying? And not really understanding it. And this is my looking back at it, my perspective as a grown woman. But I recognize, that brown paper bag thing, right? And in my sister's side of the family, I can remember that being a topic because my sister was real chocolate, dark skin. So there was favoritism on her mother's side. We had different mothers. There was favoritism on her mother's side because she was darker. And so with her and her sisters and the makeup in their family dynamic, she was treated as an outcast. Now, my sister had a heavy hand in raising me. So she treated me like an outcast. And she loved me. You know what I mean? She cared for me, but there was definitely a very dysfunctional element to our relationship that never really got mulled over and smoothed over. And I don't carry any baggage from that because I've recognized how difficult her life was and how difficult that was for her to come up in that type of environment and to be constantly rejected just because of the way you look and your skin tone. And my father was very dark skinned, so I'm also well aware of his trials and tribulations and what he's experienced and how that shaped and molded him. Now, so for me, I can be compassionate and empathetic and have the fortitude to think ahead and to be cognizant of and to be compassionate about things that my sister experienced, things that my nephews and my nieces experience, they are all very chocolate, not all, but most. I can be emotionally supportive. I can be, I've done the studying, I've read the books, I've steeped in all of this culture, African and indigenous and whatnot. Not because I'm trying to prove anything, just because that's who I am. I love to study. I love history. but that essence of my intentions is not reciprocated for the most part. And I say that understanding that, hold on, my computer my screen went, I say that understanding that most of them are not equipped with the ability to have empathy for me because of experience, etc., etc. But that's no longer a valid excuse anymore, because as Africans, as the original people, as indigenous people, we, and I say we because I'm claiming and I'm letting you know in no uncertain terms who I am and what I identify it with, regardless to whom or what, as a Black woman, as an original woman, as an African woman, right? Have to shift our energy and our mindset from being the undercurrent or the underserved or the oppressed or the underprivileged into being the mothers and fathers of civilization. How does a mother act? Those women who had been given the responsibility through my family, through consciousness, God, whatever you want to call it, were charged with caring for my well-being and my protection, and ended up doing me a lot more harm than good. That's not the mindset of a mother of civilization, to be able to mentally and spiritually abuse any child of any race, white, Black, Asian, Latino, or otherwise. As mothers and fathers of civilization, what does it mean to mother the planet? What does it mean to father the planet? So coming from this mindset and this energy of being the underserved, underprivileged, I don't look at Black people like that. I don't look at Africans like that. Even though I recognize the struggle, the strain, white supremacy, oppression, abuse, all of that type of stuff, with my studies and what I know to be true, I understand that we have the upper hand on a spiritual level. That's how I operate. That's how I think. So a lot of people have issues with mixed race people, and I'll use myself as an example because this is about me. Because subconsciously you think, I'm not saying everybody, so if you don't feel like this, you don't have to write me and say you're wrong about me. This is not about everybody. I'm making a observance based on a common consensus. Think that what makes mixed race people so special, or having privilege, and I understand the privilege that light-skinned people or mixed race people get in the white world. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a spiritual level. My advantage is because I'm mixed. My advantage is because I have white blood. My advantage is because I have lighter skin, and so this world tends to cater to me. And I'll put a footnote in that. There is truth in that. I bear witness to that, right? What's my advantage in the spiritual realm? Does the spiritual realm give me an advantage because, I had a white mother? Because I've had a very difficult life. I don't know how many of you guys have actually grown up without a mother or have been a witness to, children that grow up without mothers. That's a difficult path. That's not an easy path to walk, regardless to what my mother's race was, right? And then my father, him trying to find his way and figure things out, and you know what I mean, being as good of a father as he could, but struggling with it. And in the process, me struggling as he struggled with trying to be a father, and having me live with a bunch of different people in order to have a physical roof over my head, but no real solid, substantive, internal foundation, consistency, stabilization, right? Which is what children need. So moving in all these different arenas and then never quite being accepted, not for being mixed. In my family, there was the mixed dynamic. In the Black community, nobody really knew I was mixed. But I went through hell. I got jumped 3 times when I was in the 9th grade. I think it was the ninth grade, maybe ninth and 10th, but got jumped, got into a whole bunch of fights. And all of that wasn't because I was light skinned. Some of it is just what comes with, growing up in the hood, who I was associated, friendships and whatnot. But best believe, when I went to Castlemont in the ninth grade, in the first day of school, my father had me. I went to the Hope Academy, all black private school, from preschool to middle school. And then I went to St. Elizabeth from middle school to high school. And then I begged my dad to put me in public school. And he put me in Castlemont, which is where all of my friends were going. First day of school, a girl walks up to me and just punches me in the face. Never seen this female before in my life. Didn't have, you know what I'm saying? So I'm fighting first day of school, right? That's some light skin shit. Trust me. Easy target, right? So there may be privileges in coming from being a mixed race person and certain benefits in going into the white world. In the black world, there's not a lot of privilege. Yes, men, you know what I'm saying? That whole red bone thing, right? We have these layers of black men prefer light-skinned women, exotic women, all that type of stuff. I get that. I bear witness that, that's been a part of my landscape in growing up based on how I look and male attention and whatnot. But I need y'all to understand, there's a difference between a man approaching you with respect and wanting to cultivate a righteous relationship with you or wife you, right? Or develop a full-fledged, respectable connection with you, regardless if he's want to holler at you or if he's just trying to be a friend or whatnot. And men constantly approaching you just wanting to have sex with you. And so this idea that just because light skin or mixed females get a lot of male attention, if the attention's not healthy, you know what I'm saying? The unhealthy attention creates a schism, a mental schism. That's why a lot of these, biracial women in particular tend to be a little bit off their rocker. You know what I'm saying? And in my book, volume 2, I talk about, and this wasn't particular to mixed race women, but just this whole culture now of vanity mixed with insecurity that is plaguing a lot of young women, particularly, physically attractive women that get a lot of attention online. So you are, confident, sometimes overtly confident, sometimes just pure vanity. But then at the same time, you are extremely insecure. Clearly, you're extremely insecure because of the way that you carry yourself online and the consistency of begging for attention, not only from men, but women as well. Quiet as kept, a lot of these women are online competing with other women. The attention of men is just a byproduct. But so that the connection with men or lack thereof, the lack of depth of connection with men, right? And then also the black woman energy that I've had to deal with, right? I've been in in the conscious circle, right? And I walk into the room and I'm a speaker, I'm on the flyer, so people either know who I am or know that I'm going to speak or whatnot. And I can just feel the energy directed towards me. Negative energy. You know what I'm saying? Maybe because I'm biracial, probably because of how I look, right? And warranted. This is layered. It's you know what I'm saying? I know it's not just one specific thing. It's layered. There's the female competition thing. Then there's the light skin versus dark skin thing. Then there's the mixed race versus just, I'm not mixed, I'm just light skinned. There's a lot of layers to this. A lot of our people are unhappy. So we connect with things in other people that we don't like and use that as a means of attack. Energetically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, what we say out of our mouths. These words that people use online, they're so... You know what I'm saying? I was going to do the video and I'm not doing it. I actually did the video. I'm not putting up about social media is making people stupid. But one of the things that I talked about in that video was I was seeing criticism of Lauren London because she's mixed. Then I saw some other people talking about, Nipsey Hussle being mixed and, being African or Eritrean and then being black, right? He's not really black American. And the psychology of that just blows me away because, the ignorance in those type of statements is just, I don't know if I'm equipped to handle that type of stuff. But she's not a black woman. Why are y'all, stop taking up for her? We're like in the midst of people grieving. How could you, you say you're full blood African, which there's very few in America, unless you came from Africa. Most of the people, black people in America, are mixed to some extent. But how could you say we are the mothers and fathers of civilization, black power, black love? How could you, in the middle of people grieving and going through this, actually fix your lips to say something like that? I don't understand that. So there was some controversy before because of me making a comment about people being expendable. And I meant exactly what I said. There are people who are expendable. Those type of people are expendable to me. You know what I'm saying? We lack so much compassion. A lot of our people have been so immersed and so engrossed in the struggle and the oppression of our sojourn here that you literally can't wait to be in a position to oppress somebody else, even if it's just typing some weirdo shit on social media. Those people are expendable to me. Block, remove, done. I don't want nothing to do with you. I don't care what school you built. I don't care what your foundation is. I don't care none of that. I don't want that type of energy around me, right? So, let me see. I want to make sure that I say what I wanted to say before I get into this quote. I want to talk about specifically as a student, right, where a lot of this energy comes from. And this is not the only place. This is a long-standing, historical, socially, and culturally relevant conversation, right? I'm not going to clean up 2,000 or 3,000 years worth of, Semitic and racist, African, Arabic, like all of these different, concepts. Speaking of which, I had a guy, and I'm not going to get into that. I'm not going to clean all of this up in one video, but I want to bring some conceptualization into the conversation, as well as, like I said, draw a line in the sand for my life so that everybody is clear where I stand on this subject. So that people who make these very disrespectful and disparaging comments and call me a mulatto, which I cannot stand that word. It is a very despicable and disparaging word. And the fact that we have developed, that we've embraced this language for the mulattoes who like to call themselves mulattoes, who haven't really done the history on that word and what that means, to people who use that now as a curse word. You know what I'm saying? And they use it against me as a curse word all the time. The power is it just doesn't have any, the problem is it just doesn't have any power with me anymore. But just so you guys know, and I don't know how many people have actually looked the word mulatto up. It's rooted in the word mule. It comes from a Spanish background. It says a person of mixed white and black ancestry, especially a person with one white and one black parent, right? And it's from the late 16th century, from Spanish mulatto or young mule, right? So the original inception of that word is mule, right? There was never a time when the word mulatto was used in history to mean a term of endearment or a term of, there's this new race of people on the scene, you know what I'm saying? Let's find a new way to properly, address them in the history books. All throughout the Constitution, the word mulatto appears. Never does it appear with any sense of prestige or any sense of we are going to treat these people more fair because they, have one white parent, and, there's never any indication anywhere in the law books within the American government that people who are of mixed race descent had any prestige. Now, side note, when it comes to Native Americans, there were treaties or there were certain things, specifically in writing, that did give Native Americans a certain benefit when it came to owning property rights or marriage or things like that. But for the most part, when it comes to the black-white dichotomy, if you were a mixed race person or a mulatto, you were basically considered black. With a side note, because you did have, or a footnote, because you did have one white parent. So the 14th section, this is just an example of the Act of April 6, 1850 regarding criminal proceedings, proceeds that no black or mulatto person or Indian shall be allowed to give evidence in favor of or against a white man. Just look up mulatto in Constitution. I'm saying again, right? I'm not going to go through all of this. There's a lot of these, and I didn't want to pull up too much stuff because I knew it would throw me off my intention, right? I want to keep this short and sweet, but I'm already at 35 minutes. But all throughout the Constitution, the black codes reference freedmen, free Negroes, and mulattoes. Like, mulattoes are synonymously regarded throughout these historical bills and constitutions and whatnot as black people. And they emphasized mulattoes not because they were better than full race black people, but because they wanted to make sure that they didn't leave anybody out, that everybody was clear what mulatto represented in terms of legalities and where they were in order to make sure that if the situation ever presented itself, that legally they were emphatic about the laws and the, etc. So, one of my favorite books, The Destruction of Black Civilization by Chancellor Williams. This is one of my favorite books. I love Chancellor Williams as a scholar and a historian. I am very grateful for his in-depth. This is one of the first historic books that I read that actually really opened me up as far as my love for history. So I'm going to tell you, this is one of my favorite books, and at the same time, this is where a lot of this extremely anti-mulatto, tongue-in-cheek, I can't stand the word, you know what I'm saying? But I'm a student of history, so I have a different take on this. This is where a lot of this anti-mulatto sentiment comes from. And this is where he has an actual chapter, or not a chapter, but a section called The Mulatto Problem. So, and I've heard Dr. John Henry Clark, for the most part, replicate these sentiments. And of course, he's a historic scholar, so he, did it from his own perspective based on his historic knowledge, etc. In the book, let me see, I just want to quote a couple of things. Since the first to be called Egyptians exclusively were half African and half Asian, he's referring to white people from Europe as Asians. Their general, and he's also talking about, before this, he's going into the Semitic, meaning Arabs and Africans mixed, which there's some fine connotations to that because the indigenous or original Arabs were actually very black-skinned people. So when we talk about the war between Arabs and Africans, there's, there's a very fine line with that, because those original indigenous Arabs, just like the Dravidians, which were the indigenous native Indians, India in that part of the world, all of those people were black. I'm talking about black people with very fine hair, a different phenotype, right? Thinner noses. So, we've got all these different perplexities with African culture and with black culture, but understand, the original people in Iraq, the original people in Iran, the original people in Peru, the original people all across this planet were black, dark-skinned people. Now, the conversation about whether they migrated, the people who are indigenous to America will tell you that they never migrated from Africa, that they were already here. If you want to argue with them about where they came from, that's up to you. There's plenty of people doing that. That's not my subject, but back to my point. Since the first to be called Egyptians exclusively were half African and half Asian, their general hostility to their mother's race was a social phenomenon that should not be passed over lightly, even though that development followed a universal pattern. He goes on to say that they were becoming a part of the new power elite of the conquerors, right? He says, and I'm skipping around and have some stuff highlighted because I don't want to read all of this, just for the sake of time. Expediency and survival itself dictates loyalty and faithful service to the Asian masters in the regions over which they had gained control. This meant that in the beginning, siding with the Asians was not solely determined by whether one was a half-breed or a full-blooded African. I can't stand that term half-breed either. How could we as a people who've been through chattel slavery, who were actually breeded, you know what I'm saying, and women were raped, this half-breed, I'm not a goddamn dog. What are you talking about? I'm a human being. You know what I'm saying? I'm a soul in a body. This breed, what the... Anyway. Blacks, okay, let me catch myself. For in an all-out effort to appease the invaders, they freely gave their daughters. Now they're talking about the blacks or the Egyptians in Africa. He's talking about. They freely gave their daughters and other desirable females as gifts to become concubines, thus speeding up the reproduction process of an ever-widening scale. Nor did this lessen the wholesale capture of women in raids on African villages for the same purpose and export in Asia. Now he's talking about black men who gave black or African women to conquerors for, benefit or for money or for whatever these different, the different things that were happening at that time, as well as the rape culture that happened as a result. So here we are talking about African women being raped by white men. Some of it was based on the permission, right, of African tribal leaders because they were trying to get gain for whatever purpose. Some of it was, and probably a lot of it was by pure capture, right? Whatever it was, our people at that time did not have the ability, were not in the mindset, or did not have the proper reaction to be able to defend these African women from getting raped so that the mulatto problem did not become a problem at all. So we're talking about, first of all, children that were produced as expressions or victims of rape, a culture, a race. Victims of rape. Number one, he calls it the one-way sexual process, right? I just want to underscore this, the products of rape, right? African women had he's talking about how white women were, sacred, but African women had no such restrictions or protection. They were fair game for the men of all races, and for them, it was always open season. Okay. The psychology of that, right? Because what's happening in the womb of a woman who's giving birth to a mixed race child, the product of rape, you know what I'm saying? This child that's coming through that's now going to become an army of the mixed race problem that is now going to fight against black people on behalf of their white masters. He says, and this is the next page, again, I'm skipping around because I just want to highlight certain points. This upper ruling class of near whites, mixed race people, was at no time more than a fourth of the population. For until the Islamic flood, which began in the middle of the 7th century AD, the vast majority of the Egyptians were what modern scholars like to characterize as Negroid. But what has been referred to as a social phenomenon was in fact a development among the half-breeds everywhere that ran counter to what was normally expected, if not contrary to nature itself. Listen closely to this. This was the outright rejection of one's mother and her people and a cleaving to the father and his people. Some of the principal reasons why the half-breeds turned against the blacks and sought integration with Asians have been pointed out. These applied to the blacks as well as the new breed. So he's talking about indigenous, regular black or African people, and he's talking about new breeds, half-breeds. All sought security, advancement, and social prestige by ingratiating themselves with the current ruling classes, but the half-breeds had the inside tract and all of the advantages. So basically what he's saying is that mixed race people during this time, and this is when the process of the initial confrontation and conquering of Europeans coming down to happen. This is when all of this stuff is starting to unfold, right? It's not fresh because obviously a new breed of people have come along. So we're talking about, 50 years in, 100 years in, etc., where now people are, becoming of age and able to join the army of the white, masters in order to subjectify or oppress their own people or black people. So they were looking for social prestige, security, advancement with white people, black people, and mixed people alike. Here's the problem with this, and there is truth to that, right? The issue is, and any parents who are watching this can bear witness, the child, I'm not talking about when these people became of age, I'm talking about children, newborns, infants. An infant naturally is going to gravitate towards its mother. So this idea that, the contrarian or the contrariety, the fact that it's considered contrary for a mixed race person to turn against their mother, that's not a decision that an infant makes. That's not a decision that a 5-year-old makes or a 10-year-old makes. Children do not come into the world and say, my white father has power and prestige, so I'm going with him. Forget the poor African, you know what I'm saying, who's not going to be able to help me when I become of age. Children naturally gravitate towards their mothers, period, regardless of race, right? So what happened is, when those children were born, they were shaped and reared in the mindset of the dominant, powerful culture. Not because they were white, because there is a dominant, powerful culture, just like with the mother-father relationship, right? Whichever parent is more mentally stable, has a better financial stability, has a better outlook on the world, or is more pressed for this child's well-being, or just has more power and resources, that's the one who's going to have a level of authority or control in what actually happens to that child. You can't tell me that these mixed race children came out of their African mother's wombs and said, I'm going with you, you're the one. So there's this weird schism in how we as African people and as original people, how we look back at this concept of the mulatto, like mixed race people just came out and said, yeah, I'm banging with my white daddy or with my white father. My father was a black man. My father took legal custody of me when I was 2 weeks old. My father fought for me. My father's family raised me. So naturally, I gravitate towards what I know. I've never had the mindset of, yeah, I'm mixed. I got, I don't know my white family, but they there. I'm standing on that. That's where the power structure is. No, the power structure for me was always black culture, black love, black life. That's all I knew. There's also mixed people who grow up with their white parent or in a interracial relationship that have a different ideology for what it means to be a mixed race person that will tell you, I don't consider myself black. I'm mixed. Well, that's your reality. You live in a world where you have two parents that are there. You have a cultural understanding of the white side of who you are. Your mother raised you to love white people because of who she was, because of the white side of your family. We're talking about the social structure of how people are evolved, how people see themselves. This is why a lot of mixed race people are confounded and confused. Because they can't choose. You can't, you know what I'm saying? People want to tell you who you are and what you are. Now that I understand what God really means, what God really is, the essence of my being, the depth of who I am as a spiritual being, I dare you to try to tell me that I don't have claim to my father's legacy. I dare you to try to put me down or make me feel some kind of way because my mother was white. Good luck. I am God in the flesh. I am God having a human experience. You know what I'm saying? You love African history. You love African culture. You love indigenous history. That's what they taught. My soul is not black or white. My soul is God. Oh, here she goes talking that, you can't be God. All of us are God. Everything that is represented in the physical realm is God expanding itself through the physical realm. This is what I teach. This is what I study. This is what African spirituality and cosmology, the Netarus, you know what I'm saying? This is what this is all about, the Orishas. This is talking about God consciousness manifesting itself in the physical form. Me and you. This is what the disciples of Jesus and all these different, the prophets that were talked about in all of the scriptures, Muhammad, Buddha, Jesus, Mary Magdalene, whether these people physically existed or not, it doesn't matter. It's talking about concepts of your personality, who you can be Judas today or you can be Christ tomorrow. Choose. So, without getting into much into a religious expose, because I could, but I'm not, because it doesn't matter. And I accept people for whatever religious expression that they have, as long as it's freeing you. Stand on Christianity, you know what I'm saying, if you're free. Stand on Islam if you're free. Stand on atheism if you're free. If you're not free, you don't make such a good character witness. And that goes for history and spirituality and, you know what I'm saying, all the banners and the flags that we wave. I'm perfectly fine with you waving your banner. If you're free, I'm fine with you waving it if you're not free. But let's be clear what we're saying here. Because a lot of the people who talk shit about me being mixed are slaves. I'm not talking about a slave to the white man. I'm talking about a slave to your lower self. Only a demonic energy or frequency could actually get off on being online, spending all your time and energy trying to tear other people down. So, let's be clear what I'm saying here. And again, this is a multi-layered conversation, and I can do a video tomorrow and talk about how mixed race people have, benefits in the white world, and you know what I'm saying? How, there's a lot of mixed race, women, let's say, for instance, who don't identify as black. This is a multi-layered conversation. I'm not trying to clear everything up. I'm just drawing a line in the sand. And I want to bring some clarity and perspective for people who are mixed race, who feel lost, or men or women who have children by other races, and then, the relationships don't work out, or they do work out, but you still have these human beings that you have to help find a sense of themselves. I'm about love. I don't love everybody. I don't. I'm not spiritually there yet. Maybe I will be one day, but I'm not there yet. I don't love everybody, but I don't have to. I want to radiate love. I want to express and live love in everything that I do. And so from that perspective, I can't exude or embody hate. The people who have continuously thrown hatred towards me, I cannot, I can't reciprocate that. You're on your own. That don't mean I have to love you, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to let you take me off of my square, which is love, which is the foundation and the ever-present essence of who and what God is. Black people bully mixed people as a culture. We do. You do. You bully mixed race people. And I understand. I get that there's, pain and trauma and turmoil. You would have been a house nigga. How many times have I heard that? You would have been a house nigga. Oh, okay, so I would have been in the house getting continually raped by a man who probably I would have produced children from, and then my children would have got sold off. Like mixed children got sold off on the auction block just like everybody else. So the benefit of being in a house next to a devil that was raping me continuously, that really wouldn't have served me well. I would have been a different type of house slave if I was ever a slave at all. I'm more prone to, you know what I'm saying, queenship in my past lives. That's just how I see it. The bullying, you know what I'm saying? Got all these people out here that are feeling stressed out because black people won't love them and accept us. Oh, light-skinned people won't be in Wakanda. Come on, man. There's light-skinned people in Africa. You know what I'm saying? There's Eritreans, there's Ethiopians, there's Nigerians, there is Kenyans, there is all these different varieties and shades. And then, like I said, when we go to India, when we go to Japan, all of these indigenous people are black-skinned people. So they made it through rape or through consent or through whatever. There's a lot of history that comes behind this. But I'm not going to be a stepping stone, and nobody's going to have their foot on my neck. You know what I'm saying? Because of who my parents were. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not explaining myself about this anymore. This video isn't even me explaining myself. Like I said, I did 3 consultations. I know that this hurts a lot of people. This is an open wound for a lot of people. This is an open wound for brothers who had a phase with white women who may have produced a child. That, you know what I'm saying, that wants to love the culture and be appreciated and accepted by black people. You got so many black people that are trying to deny who they are. Black people, the Clarence Thomases of the world, who are running from their culture. Why are you spending time trying to outcast people that love and embrace you? There's something wrong with that. Especially, you know, me, I have a claim to my father's throne. I have a claim to his legacy. There's nothing that anybody can tell me about my father, you know what I'm saying, and what I went through in my life to deny that of me. You don't have that kind of power. Nobody does. And this is what I want to say to the mixed race people who are constantly being bullied, people constantly telling you who or what you are. Identify with find yourself. Through the history of your parents, that's one avenue. Go back and study the history of mixed race people. Since we want to be labeled separately, go back and look at that study and see what that looks like. Where's the island of all these, you know, beautiful mixed race people that built this great civilization and rode off into the sunset? There is none. So as the culture of America gets darker and darker, and you got all these mixed race people, and then you got, you know, the Latinos coming into play, and then you've got, you know, black people, obviously, and then you've got the indigenous people of this land, and white people are population-wise being faded out because that's what all of the indigenous cultures said would happen. All of them said that people were going to come and rule for a certain amount of time, and then their reign would be over. And through this process, that the indigenous people would perfect their wobble in their nature, as the Nation of Islam says so eloquently. So, I just want to say to, you know, mixed race people, find your own way. Don't let anybody tell you who you are. You don't want to identify as black? Do you? You feel more comfortable identifying as biracial? That's your call. We all have free will. We, as human beings, African, Native American, white, mixed, Latino, Asian. I'm at this stage in my life right now where I just want to see people flourish and live and have a high quality of life. That's my primary focus right now. Attracting people that are on the same magnetic wavelength as me, frequency and energy. I've been so thoroughly persecuted my whole life. This is not new to me. You know what I'm saying? What I've been through in the public eye. I've been persecuted my whole entire life. Some of it because of how I look, some of it because of being mixed. A lot of it, most of it because of the God essence in my spirit and who I am. Stop letting people persecute you. Stop letting people make you feel less than because of who your parents are. And I'm saying that to mixed race people, but I'm also saying that to the darkest of dark of my brothers and sisters. Y'all are my people. I don't give a damn what nobody has to say. You know what I'm saying? That's what I grew up around. That's what the reality of my life has always been. Oakland, California, one of the most racially confident and prideful cities in the world, who has been written and will continue to be written in the history books. That's what I grew up around. Black culture, black love, black revolution, black power, Nation of Islam, consciousness. You know what I'm saying? The Moors and the Hebrew Israelites and all this, my love for African history and African culture. Most of the books behind me are about history. This is who I am. So there, you know what I'm saying? Let's draw a line in the sand. You can't tell me who I am. You can't tell me what I can claim. You can't tell me who I can teach. You can't tell me who to study. I'm not her. We got a lot of these, soft-minded and soft-skinned, especially with this millennial. Y'all got to toughen up. Just because somebody says something online that makes you feel some type of way, you got to know who you are. I know who I am. I'm very confident in who I am as a woman, as a mother, as a black woman, as a God. You understand what I'm saying? So this physical aspect of me is a very small portion of who and what I am. People know me around the world because of my mind, because of my spirit. Stop letting people determine how you identify yourself. Go back and read the history. Go back and find yourself through your ancestors and through your lineage. And if you identify more with a certain side, that's beautiful. Go for it. You want to identify whatever you want to identify as. Confidence and authenticity is what this is all about right now. That's the name of the game today. And yes, we are in a beautiful moment of history where black culture and African history and everything that's beautiful about who we are as a people is being celebrated. Finally, keep celebrating it. Keep loving it. But don't let nobody oppress you or suppress you. White, black, or otherwise. I would refuse to be a slave to white supremacists, and I refuse to be a slave to black supremacists as well. So, I hope I said everything. I hope I didn't smack too much. I'm just going through my little couple of notes that I wrote down. I get the chip on the shoulder that the mixed people have. I get the chip on the shoulder that black people have against mixed race people. I get all of that. But the bottom line is, do you want to be free? Because if you want to be free, you ain't got time to be hating nobody else. You ain't got time to be blaming nobody else for your problems, black, white, mixed, or otherwise. It's time for us to start accepting our role and responsibility as leaders of our own lives, as saviors of ourselves. You know what I'm saying? I'm not waiting for nobody to come save me. I'm not waiting for nobody to validate me. Not anymore. I used to want validation. Because I've been persecuted, because I've been ostracized, because I've been rejected. You know what I'm saying? But oh, what a beautiful feeling it is to be free and to accept and embrace who and what you are. My hair, my nose, you know what I'm saying? All the things that make me uniquely me, things about myself that I didn't like at one point in time. I love it all now. You understand what I'm saying? And that's what I want for those of you guys that are out here that come from this skewed, world of race that doesn't really help you to define who you are in the essence of your being. I'm not going to be explaining myself for validation. I'm not going to be bullied. You can't make me feel some type of way. And I want for all of you guys that are struggling with finding your real sense of self as black women, as black men, as mixed race men and women, or whoever you are, wherever you are right now, I'm trying to attract like-minded people, like-minded energy, God frequency, God consciousness. That's what I'm about right now. And if you are with me on that, then cool. And if you're not, just stay out of my way. You know what I'm saying? Much love to, again, Chancellor Williams. Like I said, I had took issue with that point, but this is one of my best history books, as well as When We Ruled by Robin Walker, Nile Valley Contribution to Civilization by Anthony Browder, uh, uh, what was the one? I don't know. It'll come to me. That's not even what I want to do. ZaZaAli.com is my website. I'm going to put my description below. Make sure y'all support and let me know your feedback on this topic. And much love to y'all. I appreciate your time and attention. I talked for an hour, and I think I said a lot, and I think I hopefully cleared the air about some of this stuff. But I love who I am. I love myself, and hopefully you will get to that point where you love you too. All right. Peace.